I do want to set this somewhere else. Can I give it to you? I'm going to kind of just pick up because somehow I ran out of time last night and I stopped at like a year and a half sober. So, and it says getting started in AA, I guess is what they put in there. I never mentioned that. They threw that in there. And so, but I look at, I really hope, I'm 17 years sober, I got sober at 25, I truly hope to live to be 75 years old, right? And if I keep doing the things I've been doing, I can get 50 years of sobriety if I stay connected with you. So 17 compared to 50, I'm still getting started. This is a wonderful, wonderful feeling when I think about that. It reminds me of when my mother got this letter. She was like 39 years old and thought her life was sort of winding down until she got a letter from her great aunt in Iceland who was 108 years old. So she started to do the math and started thinking, oh my God, I'm just barely starting at life, right? And so I'm still getting started. Getting started in Alcoholics Anonymous can last a long, long time. It really can. So, and I'll give you an exact, many parts of the life of a normal human being I'm just now experiencing. Right? I told you that I'm experiencing my first child, which is coming in about 4 to 6 weeks. Just got married. My wife is 8 months pregnant. We got married in March. You can do the math. Just didn't do that quite perfectly, but nobody judges anybody in Alcoholics Anonymous. So, and certainly not Scott. He doesn't. But for many, many years in Alcoholics Anonymous, I was a relationship retard. Really. It's scary. It's really scary. Here's an example of how my relationship life of being single in Alcoholics Anonymous, this little story will give you a good idea of how emotionally equipped I was to function on this planet in this area. 7 years sober, real active in Alcoholics Anonymous, big home group in Covina. Just obsessed with this woman who was absolutely crazy, but just a kind-hearted, good woman, crazy, absolutely insane. But I was really in love with her. And Monday night 4-speaker meeting, 150 people. We're out in the parking lot at the break when everybody's out in the parking lot. Just people as deep as you can see. And I don't remember what I said, but it was probably inappropriate. And she was very angry at me. She's in her shorts and her hiking boots, and she is on the hood of my car, pounding on the front window. And everybody's like, I've got like 9 guys I sponsor, around, and lots of friends, and they're all watching this. Some are just going, right on, right? She is on the hood of my car, pounding on the front window, yelling, you SOB, you SOB. And I put the car in reverse and back up just a little bit, enough. Boom! She's sitting right there on the sidewalk, and she's starting to get up. Now, you guys are all thinking, that's really sick to be acting like that in front of everybody. That's not the sick part. The sick part is that as she was pounding on the window, staring at me, yelling, you SOB, you SOB, I was behind the wheel thinking, I have never been more in love in my life. Tells you a lot about me, doesn't it? Anyway, I'm going to pick up kind of where I left off last night, and I'm going to try to spend a little bit of time over steps 1, 2, and 3. But I'm going to squeeze in a little bit more of early sobriety because it's just so. I've always found that it's really important because it's really the new person we're trying to help. We all just do what we do, and we know that we know that our interaction and our listening to each other and all of that is vitally important in our own lives. But really, any meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous is really there for that new person who is really could be, and they may not even know it, on the verge of not staying in Alcoholics Anonymous and don't even understand it. And so I was that. Let's just give it a little summary. Blair up on the bridge. First sponsor Bob W. in the Navy. And we got this little meeting going on in the little aft, way down in the bottom of the ship. And it was just Bob and I reading the big book back and forth to each other, and him taking me through the steps. And what happened, Blair wound up being our little number 3, right? Out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean every night. Now it's Bob, Karl, and Blair. And we're reading the big book back and forth, and maybe, they started to make jokes. The other guys in the ship were making jokes about, it was a little battery shop where they stored batteries, and they, the Alkies, they're not drinking anymore. They're down there sniffing that battery acid now. They were making little jokes about it, and but sooner or later, in came one more guy, popping his head in and saying, "Can I come in? What do I need to do to be able to sit in here with you guys?" And he little did he know that nothing, just come on in and sit in with us. And by the time I left the Navy at 2 years sober, on the last meeting that I attended in that little battery shop, you couldn't fit everybody in there. There was 13 men that were in that meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful experience. I got out of the Navy at 2 years. I have no skills for making a living. As I told you, they called me an electrician. Drunk, they would not let me stand watch on a light switch. Sober, I'm terrified of electricity. So I have no skills to make a living. I get out of the Navy because my first sponsor and his sponsor really hounded me about the amends. I've got no money. I'm still push starting the same car I got sober with, and I'm going to school. I told you about that last night. And everything I own is in my car, and I'm driving up the 405 freeway and then onto the 605 to go into Covina, and I start thinking. I'm puttering along the freeway. Guys are blazing by me in nice, fast BMWs like they do on the LA freeways. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I got to get a life. I'm 2 years sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. I need to get a life. I've heard people talk about that in meetings. They talk about getting a life. I need to get one, and I need to get one quick. I'm going to go to school. I'm going to have to work because, nobody's paying my bills. I'll stop by some meetings when I get a chance. I'm 2 years sober. I'm going to get a life, and then when I get a life, I'll stop by Alcoholics Anonymous when I can. But by God, I need to get a life. And I pulled into a noon meeting in Covina. Just simply wanted to know where the meetings were going to be that I was going to go to after a few years, after I get a life. And that's where I met the man that became my sponsor for the next 10 years, Eddie Cochran. One of the pioneers of Southern California Alcoholics Anonymous. At that time, his medallion said 1951. So at that time, this would have been 1989. So he would have been 37 years sober at that time, and making coffee at the noon meeting. And just like the very first guy that came up to me and said, "Hey, never seen you here before. What are you doing?" When I first got out of the treatment center, that's what Eddie did. I was there a little bit early, and he came over, poured me a cup of coffee and said, "Haven't seen you here before. What's up?" And I said, "Well, I'm 2 years sober, fresh out of the Navy, and I'm going to get a life up here. I'm going to be going to school, I'm going to be working, and I'm glad to know where your meetings are because I'll be stopping by when I get a chance." And that's exactly was his response. Now, I am so glad he was the kind of man that he did not need to know me, that he gave me the answer that one alcoholic gives to another alcoholic. And I'm so glad I brought that up to him. And that because had I stopped at my school to check in first and maybe find out who my guidance counselor was and explain to that guidance counselor, well, I'm a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous, haven't had a drink in 2 years, fresh out of the Navy, no skills for making a living, I'm going to be going to school here. I have to work also at least 6 hours a day in order to pay any bills. So I'm really not going to go to many meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm going to really work on my life. That guidance counselor would have said, "Excellent idea. You're sober a couple of years. You really don't need to go to that. Stop by a meeting once in a while. But yes, obviously, you're 27 years old. You need to get a life." Right? I'm so glad that Eddie talked to me like a real alcoholic and gave me an answer that a real alcoholic gives another one without even knowing anything about me. He said, "School and work are wonderful, but that's what we do in between meetings, son." And what he was giving me was the secret to long-term sobriety and comfortable sobriety, and that is that I need to live in Alcoholics Anonymous and visit the world. Instead of trying to live out there in the world and visit Alcoholics Anonymous when convenient, which so many people that over the years that I have known have tried to do. And when I say live in Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm not talking about being at the morning attitude adjustment meeting, the noon meeting, the 5 o'clock happy hour meeting, the 7 o'clock meeting, and the 8:30 meeting, and working behind the counter at the Alano Club. If you're doing that, fantastic. Great. But that's not what I'm talking about, living in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm talking about a spiritual centeredness of knowing who and what I am, what my problem is, what my solution is, and the plan of action on a daily basis to bring that about. And that must come first in my life at all costs. I need to make decisions on my life based upon the fact that I'm a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I need to weigh decisions on my life as to how that's going to affect that. And that has been the secret in my life. One of the very first things that Eddie told me I needed to do was to put newcomers in that car. Now, I'm push starting this little Volkswagen, hole in the floorboard, and I said, Eddie, there's a hole in the floorboard. One of the new guys might fall through the floorboard. And he said, put new guys in your car, and I promise you, your life will get better. I thought it was silly, but he was 10 years sober when I was born, so I thought, well, I'll give it a try. And the very first night I did what he asked me to do and put some new guys in my car, I realized he had not lied to me. My life got better immediately. The new guys could push start my car. He didn't say how much better. He just said better. I asked Eddie to be my sponsor, and what has often happened before, after I talk a lot, people often say, well, what happened to Bob W.? What happened to him? Where's he at? Well, I can just tell you a quick little story. It says a lot. He stayed in the Navy for a while. He moved to Portland. Of course, I stayed in contact with him, but this kind of says it all. On March 13th, 124 days ago, I was getting married. And the best man at my wedding was Bob W. I thought it was appropriate that he be my best man simply because I've been his best man twice. And I had not heard from Blair forever until literally about 30 days ago. A miracle of the internet. And in comes this email through the website from my old ship, and all it said was, have you been to Victoria, British Columbia lately? Blair. That's where Bob was reading the big book to him as he had him propped up on there. And so it's been wonderful just lately to be able to see these guys that have been so instrumental in my sobriety. God, every once in a while I hit dead brain cells. They still just sort of misfire. Does that happen to you guys? It's all of a sudden, boom, all the time. Also, long road with my family. A long road to being able to heal with my family. One of the biggest mistakes I started to try to do with my family was try to explain to them what I needed to do in Alcoholics Anonymous in order to stay sober. And it became very, very apparent that although they started to love to see the results, they just don't understand what I need to do in Alcoholics Anonymous to stay sober. And finally, somebody explained it very well. Non-alcoholics that love you are not going to understand what you need to do in Alcoholics Anonymous to stay sober any more than they can understand why you drank the way you did. They just are not going to know. And so I had to completely shift my mode of thinking into trying to get my parents and family to understand me, to completely turn that ball around and say, oops, my job is to try to understand them. Because I'm the one that's missed out on the whole life. Maybe I should be starting to ask them questions about what they're doing in their life so I can learn to know them more. Instead of trying to... It's a losing battle to be understood by anybody. It's just whenever I take the stance of I need to be understood here, I lose. I really, really lose. And so that's when I started to try to learn about who my parents were, who my family was. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful journey. It really has been. Found out what an amazing man my father was, and I also, at the same time as finding out what an amazing man, I started to have a lot of guilt over seeing more and more of the damage and humiliation I would have done to that family. Because my parents were very much in the public eye in Seattle and the neighborhood, and, you know, being a Lutheran minister in the neighborhood and having a drug dealer for a son just doesn't go well. It really does not go well. And my mother, due to her profession, has become very, very well known in the Pacific Northwest, and so I was doing a lot of damage to the family. Now, just about 6 years ago, I got a really, really good shot about how Alcoholics Anonymous really transformed my relationship with my family, and that was I was asked to come down to Nogales, Arizona. I'm way in Alaska. Anybody even know where Nogales, Arizona is? Are you from there? Okay, good. It is the armpit of the United States. It's just really... You been in Nogales yet? Oh. And it was... you guys have a really nice campsite with nice little cabins. This place was dusty. It was hot. It was sticky. There were tarantulas on the ground. I mean, and... when the trucks went, they gave me this little tent on the side of the road where the trucks were blazing by, and so I was going to sleep off in the bushes. It was just horrendous. Just a horrendous camp-out weekend. But it's one of those things where you say you're going to do it, you do it. Before I went, I called my mother and I said, I'm going to be in Nogales. My pager may not work. I have one of those nationwide pagers, but there's certain blackout areas that don't work, and guaranteed Nogales is one of those areas. And so I said, I just don't want you to be worried if you try to page me and I'm not answering. And she goes, oh my goodness, you really have to get a hold of Don and Leona. They just live just in Green Valley, just north of Nogales. And I say, who's Don and Leona? She goes, oh, you remember, Don was the best man in your father's my wedding. I said, I wasn't there. I was not there. But I had known them. They've been lifelong family friends, but I really had not seen them since I was about 9 years old. But of course, I had heard about them, and I knew who they were. I go, oh, absolutely, I'll give them a call. And I call up Don, and I go, this is Karl Morris, and I'm going to be down in Nogales for the weekend, and I'd love to stop by and see you. It'd be great to see you. And he gets all excited. He goes, oh, absolutely, it'd just be wonderful. And he says, I hear you love to golf. And that's just a magical word. I mean, it's like a golf whore. I'll golf with anybody, anytime, for any reason, and I don't even need to know your name. I just, boom, I'm there with you. He says, bring your clubs. We'll go out and play this course right near my house. I go, fantastic. So we're walking along, and he starts to ask me very specific, pertinent questions about my life. The conversation was very one-sided. I tried to squeeze some in, but he just specific. I mean, he knew what school I graduated from. He knew what companies I'd been with. He knew about the recovery homes I'm involved with. He knew about everything about my life. And one after another, he was asking me questions that were very pertinent to my life. And by the fourth hole, I said, Don, I'm really embarrassed. I haven't seen you in 30 years. And I know very little about your life, but you seem to know an awful lot about mine. How is that possible? And he said, well, two reasons. First reason is because before your father died in 1996, he was always talking about how proud he was about what you were doing in your life in all areas. That was nice to hear. It was not a secret, because after about 3 to 4 years, my father and I did become very, very close. And we completely mended our relationship, and I learned a lot from that man. And in my case, just in mine, it's not true in everybody's, had I not repaired that relationship, I believe I'd be walking around this planet as half a man. I really do. I believe that about my relationship with my father. But it was very nice to hear from an old family friend to reaffirm that. It was very, very nice. The next thing he said just absolutely floored me, and just I knew right then that Alcoholics Anonymous had just worked miracles. He said, besides, every Christmas I get the letter. And I'm like, yes, I'm finally in that damn thing. It was huge. And it's very unfair. Last October, my family had an engagement party for my wife and I. We were engaged in October, got pregnant in November. And I'm really kind of proud of it, to tell you the truth. When we went to the doctor to talk about that we really wanted to have kids immediately after the wedding, and he told us we needed to get off the birth control and we needed to give her some time to get off it. And she's 10 years younger than I am, and doctor looked over at me. He didn't know me. It was her family doctor. He said, "Yeah, and you'd better hurry, mister." I said, "Just following doctor's orders is what I'm doing." But what's unfair is, no, it wasn't. The engagement party was actually right after Christmas, so the Christmas letter had been done. Now, my wife, at that time fiance, had only really been involved in our family for about 14 months. We had been dating for about 14 months. And right there, in the Christmas letter, she's already in it. I mean, I just looked at this and go, for God's sakes, 14 months qualifies you to get into this thing? I had to work for, 14 years to get my name back in that thing. And she gets it like right away. It's just really unfair sometimes. So, what was really, when I look back on my early sobriety, it really was two things. Extreme activity in Alcoholics Anonymous, but not enough. And finally, with me at 6 months, taking the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. See, they have to work together. There's no way to work the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and not be an active member of Alcoholics Anonymous in good conscience, because how can you claim to be working the steps and disregarding 12? Right? Because it doesn't say, just in case, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps and it's convenient, we suggest you might want to try to work with others. It doesn't say stuff like that. It says, this is what we do. Right? And so they work in synergy. And as I told you, for 6 months, I was getting sicker and sicker with lots and lots of activity. But when the steps actually were I was tricked into working the steps, what it did was, the first piece of real hope that it gave me was, I finally knew what my problem was. It's not that I didn't feel soul sick, and still don't every once in a while feel soul sick. It's few and far between now. But now, the big difference, and it came in like at a year and a half sober, where I finally realized, oh my God, when I am feeling that soul sickness in my belly, because I still was getting it, and it took a long time for it to not be creeping in. The big difference was that I wasn't saying, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And that is so huge when I'm able to say, that's what it is. It's my alcoholism starting to rear its head. That's why I feel that way. Right? It's so wonderful about Alcoholics Anonymous that prior to Alcoholics Anonymous, lots and lots of people spend thousands and thousands of dollars on therapy to find out why they feel so different and what's wrong with them and why they feel so different. And you come into Alcoholics Anonymous after spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, and we give you a very simple answer as to why you feel so different. Because you are. It's a very, very simple answer. And for me to be, the first thing that I truly believe I have to do in step one is that I need to diagnose my problem. And a little analogy is, if you were driving on the freeway, do you have freeways here in Alaska? You do? I haven't seen one yet. But say you're on the freeway and your car breaks down. You should be glad if you don't have freeways. If your car breaks down, you don't just sort of randomly start, well, let's change a tire, see if that does it. Well, let's change the battery, see if that does it. Here, let's, change the... I don't know shit about cars. But it's true. Let's try an alternator, all right? If that doesn't work, we're going to try the windshield wiper, right? You wouldn't do that. You would not do that. If you know enough, you would diagnose the problem before you started to try any solution. Or you would find somebody who could diagnose it for you. right? And that's what we must do in Alcoholics Anonymous. We've got to know what our problem is. I've got to find out what truly is my problem. What is my alcoholism? I must understand allergy of the body, obsession of the mind, and the spiritual malady. I've got to get that firmly grounded in my life, be able to apply it to, and be able to review my life and see exactly how that worked, and how that mental obsession and the physical allergy has manifested itself in my life. We don't know that when we first come in. We come in and we know we're in deep trouble. We just don't know what the real trouble is, but we know we are in deep, deep trouble. And the 12 and 12 says, under the lash of alcoholism, we were driven to AA. It was there we learned the fatal nature of our disease, right? We do not come to Alcoholics Anonymous knowing the fatal nature of alcoholism. We think we've just got lots and lots of problems and we are drinking and using too much. Right? And I'm so glad that it was really, really diagnosed for me that the center point of my problems are based upon the fact that when I cannot drink successfully because of the physical allergy. I cannot drink successfully. I cannot not drink successfully because of the mental obsession. Now, in regards to alcohol, there's only two types of people on this planet. Those that drink and those that don't. Now, I've just identified I can't drink successfully, and I cannot not drink successfully. So I can't do either. I'm in the ultimate catch-22. Damned if I do, damned if I don't. Because if my problem is just that I cannot drink successfully, well then, that's where that big thing is. Stop. Just stop. Just stop. And if you're like me, you can't just stop. You can stop for a period of time. But it slowly, I become so restless, irritable, and discontent, so frustrated with life. So, especially like with me, where I really had no way to go in life. I didn't know what any pathway to success was going to be. And I'm 2 years sober. And I don't know what pathway to success is going to be. I have no skills to lean back on. I mean, drug dealing and being a member of Alcoholics Anonymous just don't mix. They really don't. Sponsors frown on that stuff. It's not to say that it doesn't happen, but it just does not go along with a good, solid program. It really doesn't. And so that was really, and of course I always had the idea, I could transfer the sales techniques over into real life. It just doesn't really work there either. It really doesn't. It also is really difficult coming from where I came from, because at 14 years old, I'm walking around with a wad of money that is, I can't even drive, and I'm making more than my father. See, here's another example of the damage I can do. I remember at 15 years old, my father, I was caught one more time for dealing drugs, and I said to him, "You make $14,000 a year as a pastor. I make that in a month." Say things like that to a man like that. It's just unbelievable, the type of stuff that we can do. And so, which way am I going to go? So I needed to understand that if my main problem is my relationship with alcohol, if I focus in on that, if I focus in on the solution to that, all of those other things are going to come in time. And it's really, really, I have always seen that. I've never seen anybody who is really focused in on solving their alcoholism problem. I've never seen them starve. I have never seen them not get the other areas of their life going sooner or later. Not in the ways that they've thought, but they've always come to pass. So, if I can, and when we were talking about thoroughly conceding also last night, and I've always kind of viewed that when I really get the information of what the allergy of the body and obsession of the mind really is in my life, and I think concession and surrender are enough synonyms that I'm going to use them together. Of course, there'd be a little argument, but that's wonderful coffee shop talk that will keep a new guy, out of the bars until 2. 5 here. Your bars are open till 5? Oh my God, you got to stay up with your newcomers late, don't you? And then pick them up again at 6, don't you? But I've always sort of pictured it as that when I really find out what's truly wrong with me and the fatal nature of alcoholism, I should, as being new and for the first time really finding out what what that really means, what my problem really is, what the diagnosis really is, and the fatal nature of it. I should get as sinking and sick a feeling in my belly as if I had just gone to take a blood test last week and the doctor called me in, sat me down in the office and said, "I'm very, very sorry, but you're HIV positive." I should get the same. Just imagine that sinking feeling that people get when that information is given to them, because pretty much a death sentence has been passed, right? There's really nowhere to go. That, when I really truly understand what my alcoholism is, I'm facing the same type of malady. I am facing a death sentence. And it's not going to be one of those death sentences where everybody's going to be kind and helping and really good to you, because death from alcoholism alienates everybody. And when we compare them to diseases, when we compare alcoholism to like cancer, like the big book does, it's really, when people are dying of cancer, people are very, very concerned, and they rally around when you have friends in your life, and family is all very concerned, and in fact they try to make your life easier. But as the disease of alcoholism, they really don't rally around and pat you on the back or and get all concerned. And the reason is because when you get diagnosed with cancer and are dying of cancer, you just don't steal your friend's TV. You don't do that. It's right, and so it's hard to play the disease card with people that love you. Right? You can't really throw that out. I'm sorry, amends just don't work with, I'm sorry, I've got a disease, that's why I did that. They just don't buy it. There's a lot more to be done. So, if I can concede to that, I kind of like to draw the picture if you want to see old European wars where, one side was dressed in red, one side in blue, the armies there, and there's great paintings if you travel, paintings of these wars and of surrender periods. You often see that where the generals are standing there. One side is very proud and one side is just beaten down, and they've got the little boy with the scroll, and he's showing the Articles of Concession, right? And the one general's about to sign. And that's because, he's willing to concede because too many men, women, and children and property are gone. And so they're willing to concede. And I need to look at that in my alcoholism. I am willing to concede to alcoholism because I understand I am beat. And I'm willing to sign the Articles of Concession. Right? And now in those ancient days, those Articles of Concession do not say, until you change your mind. Right? It does not say to the other general, yes, you need to do this, 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 and this, and we will quit killing your men, women, and children and destroying your property unless you change your mind and decide it's not important. It does not say that. And I need to understand that when I sign the Articles of Concession to alcoholism, it does not include until I change my mind. When I sign up for this, I really need to not have any lurking notion that I am going to be not doing this at some point. I really need to surrender to alcoholism. And when you can see symptoms. It's hard for me to see it in myself, but you can see symptoms when you work with people as to those that are surrendered and those who have conceded and those who have not. Those who have conceded and have surrendered, it's real easy to see the symptoms. They're the ones with commitments, with sponsors, trying to be sponsors at lots and lots of meetings. They often use the word, yes, I'll do that. Absolutely. Right? Those are articles of people who have conceded, who understand the fatal nature of their disease, and are willing to do whatever's necessary. The symptoms of those that are not surrendered are usually the following. Why? Well, what? No, huh? Do what? Right? Very obvious. I mean, it's real obvious to see who's what. It's hard to see in ourselves, though. And I always like to, see, that's why I always like to, and I'll get into this in 3, that I like to be able to answer a solid question in my life to know whether I'm still active enough and still conforming to the Articles of Concession to my alcoholism. And I'll get to that in a couple of minutes. So if I have surrendered to that, I move on to step 2. Out of we agnostics, I really truly believe that step 2 all boils down to that one question. And it just says, am I willing to believe, do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe in a power greater than myself? a very simple question. It does not say, have you adopted a very serious doctrine that you can abide by? Have you really got some deep spiritual insights in your short time in Alcoholics Anonymous? Can you explain to somebody else your relationship with God? It doesn't ask that. It says, do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe in a power greater than myself? And then it just follows that right up with, as soon as a man can answer that he does believe or is even willing to believe, we emphatically assure him he's on his way. It does not say we sort of tentatively say, maybe you're kind of on your way. Think about step 2 a little while longer. Double check with some other people about their relationship with God to compare it with yours. Right? It doesn't say anything like that. It is a very, very simple question, and it's 99% of the time it can be answered in a positive way. The part of, am I even willing to believe? And as soon as I can answer that, I'm on my way. So I get to step 3, and I got to tell you, I was really, for a long time in Alcoholics Anonymous, I was really confused about the idea of God, let alone the words of turning my will and life over to the care of God. One of the things that I can tell you when I was confused about, because I'd hear about, and Scott makes jokes about this, about the parking lot God and the relationship God and people, and I was mishearing the way they worded their relationship with God, and I thought they were talking that there were multiple gods in Alcoholics Anonymous and I'm supposed to choose one. Apparently I wasn't listening to chapter 5 where it says there's one who has all power, that one is God, may you find him now. I just must have missed that. So I thought this was like pagan Rome, and it surely will fall. Right? So I was getting more and more confused, and this is when I was dying of untreated alcoholism and not really and was not reading the book. And again, walking on eggshell relationship with my family. So I called up my dad one night when I was feeling rather distressed, and I said, Dad, you've been a minister and a theologian your whole life, 40 years. You spent your whole life studying about, talking about, living a life based upon God. Please tell me, what's God? And he said, how long has it been since you had a drink? I said, I think it's been about 4.5 months. He said, well then God is whatever got you to those people in Alcoholics Anonymous. For Christ's sake, do what they say. Click. I remember one other time he told me, hey, don't go way out on the branches of the big tree of spirituality. Stick with the trunk. Great, go out on little ventures into this side and deeper off here. But you know what? The further away you get from the solid trunk of spirituality and out on one of those limbs, it's great to go get a little view of something, but you know what? The limb gets thinner the farther you get out away from the basis. And the basis that I also didn't realize, this took me many, many years to realize this also, and that is that as a child, many people have often questioned me, being raised as a Lutheran minister's son, boy, were they just slamming it down your throat? Was that difficult? And I don't remember anything like that. In fact, and this is a great thing that I learned about my father, he moved us all to the island of Borneo when I was 4, came back when I was 9. He was there as a missionary. He was to start a church. He was with the Basel Christian Church out of Switzerland had sent him over there, and he went to start this church. When he came back, indeed he started his church. It's still thriving, still successful. Went back in '98 to see it. In fact, there's 6 of them now and about 10,000 members. It was just amazing. They treated us like returning kings. It was really quite an experience. However, my father came back from that trip to Borneo. Now, Borneo is a Muslim state, right? And I remember as a child when they do the call to prayer, that still rattles my bones as one of the most spiritual things I've ever heard in my life. It's I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about, the 5 o'clock, the late call to prayer. And there's a lot of Hindus and a lot of Buddhists. My father came back from that. He went there, a Scandinavian Lutheran minister with one view of life. He came back thinking they had taught him more than he had taught them. Now, he went and started implementing meditation techniques into his practices when working with elderly and sent the bishops of the Lutheran Church through the roof. Just meditation, massage, acupressure, all of these breathing techniques that are part of Eastern spirituality, and he just got himself in all sorts of trouble. Right? So he was a very open-minded man. I was never slammed down with one view of God at all. And I didn't know all this was going on around me. I'm like smoking weed, listening to Deep Purple is what I'm doing. Right? I don't know any of this great stuff is going on in my family. I don't know my father is going through major transformations in his life. These are all things I miss. So I'm confused in Alcoholics Anonymous about this third step thing. They say, made a decision to turn my will and life over to the care of God as understood. You know, if you ask me, have you done that? I'm sitting back there 9 months sober. Have you done that? I'd go, I think so. But I can't say yes. Because how do I measure the answer to turning my will and life over to the care of God? They're very intangible words. How do I know, my will and my life? What really is that? If you would have said, turn your car and your clothes over to the care of God, as you understand them, I would be, that afternoon, because by that time I had become desperate. That afternoon, I would have push-started my little Volkswagen and put it on over to any church, because I figured God must be there, I suppose. And I would have knocked on the door, the pastor would have come, and I would have said, you know what, I'm trying to stay sober. They say I need to turn my car and my clothes over to the care of God, as I understand him. My understanding is he might be here. So, here's the keys to my Volkswagen. It's still running, so you don't have to push start it. And I would have taken off my dirty leather pants. I literally, other than my Navy uniform, all I ever wore off the ship were leather pants, leather jacket, black boots, black tank top. My hair, I'd really screw it all up, and I'd wear long dangly earrings at night, long dangly earrings and sunglasses at night. And I'm sitting in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous in July in Southern California. This one acquaintance of mine said that I was suffering from IRS problems at that time. That's imaginary rock stars, what that is. But I would have taken off the leather pants and not leather underwear, just leather pants, and taken off the jacket, and I would have laid it down, and I would have walked down the street with no car and no clothes, naked, feeling really stupid. But I could have come back to you and said, I did what you asked, and I would have had a solid answer and solid proof that I had done that. But you're asking me to turn my will and my life over to the care of God, as I understand him. And how do I get some solid proof that I've done that or continue to do that? So I needed to find out what these words actually meant. What is my will and my life? And so let's try to review that. I think I will take a sip of Diet Squirt. I think I will take a sip of Diet Squirt. I think I will take a sip of Diet Squirt. I have just changed my life. Ever so slightly. To see any evidence of that I just changed my life, there would have to be an immediate drought. None of you get any liquid at all. I would live about 18 minutes longer than you. Because of that sip of Diet Squirt that I just took, and you guys can't drink during this meeting, so I would, as we all died out, that Diet Squirt changed the course of my life by 18 minutes. However slight that tick of destiny is, there it went, right there. So my will is just my thinking. But if I take no action upon it, my life has not been changed. So my will is my thinking. My life is a sum total of actions that I've taken up to this point. I come to Alcoholics Anonymous. I've been operating on sick thinking my whole life. The actions I've been taking on that sick thinking have created a destroyed life. I'm now in Alcoholics Anonymous. You've heard the old saying, I cannot think my way into better living. I must live my way into better thinking. And I truly believe that's true. I cannot think my way into this thing. And so you guys have often said to the new person, forget your thinking. Throw out your thinking. Right? So, let's first of all reword step 3. I know it can be blasphemy, and it's on tape, and you can accuse me of this, but whatever. But let's change the wording of step 3. Made a decision to turn my thinking and my actions over to the care of God as I understand them. But we can't do anything about our thinking, so let's even go a little bit. We're really going to go out on a limb here. We're going to drop out that first part and change the wording of step 3 to made a decision to turn my actions over to the care of God as I understood them. See, now we've got some tangible words here, right? Something that I can really grab a hold of and answer you, right? So I'm looking for a place to turn my actions over to that represent the care of God. And where am I going to turn those actions to? It's asking me. Made a decision to turn my actions over to the care of God as I understood them. Well, where am I going to turn my actions over to that represent the care of God? Well, I suppose I could go volunteer in the soup line. I could go get active in a church. I could go get active in the mosque. I could go get active in the synagogue. I could go get active with the United Way. I don't know. What am I going to do? Well, this is just my view. As a sober alcoholic, I truly believe that almost 70 years ago, I'm going to back up again. Let's make a comparison. Just for comparison reasons, based upon Western civilization, most of you know this story, that millions and millions of people think that there was this amazing gift from God 2,000 years ago, gave His only Son, died on the cross, forgiveness of sins, new covenant, all this type of stuff. Millions of people live by that very successfully. It's wonderful. Great. It's truly believed. Great direct gift from God for mankind. Right? They have big story about it. 3 wise men, little manger, right? Star, all angels singing. Everybody gets excited on the 25th, even though it's really not the date. Right? It is. It's the date of a pagan sun god date, I believe. Interesting stuff. But, so, they truly believe that there's an amazing gift directly from God. Well, I believe 70 years ago, Moses, Muhammad, Jesus, and probably the big guy were all up there and they're just having their little morning chat, and God said, you guys, man, there's a group of guys down there, men and women, that just don't get it. I mean, we've just had lots of religions down there, a lot of them good and some not so good, but they're just not getting it. They are dying in the gutters, they are destroying their families, and they don't think they're alcoholic. Everybody thinks they are but them, and they just can't get it. What do you guys think we ought to do? Right? Muhammad probably said, I don't know, let's talk, let's send the solution to Jung, the problem to Silkworth, and we're going to, we'll start this Oxford group thing up, just a blip in history long enough to be able to get a plan of action. Let's converge it on this drunk down on Wall Street. When you really study that, as to how that all happened between the solution coming across from Switzerland from Carl Jung, Silkworth working, Jung knew our solution, did not know what our problem was, did not know any plan of action. But he knew what our solution was, vital spiritual awakening. Silkworth knew exactly what our problem was, but really didn't know how to bring about the solution, let alone what the solution really would be. And the Oxford groups had this plan of action, but they didn't know what the solution or the problem was, but they were wandering around with a plan of action going on. Right? They were, all at the same time in history, and it all converged right in on Bill. Amazing stuff. I truly believe it's bigger than, that there was no room at the inn. It's a big deal. Right? Truly the powerful hand of God at work for us. An amazing gift. An amazing gift. Right? And so, if I believe that, which I do, amazing direct gift for our specific community, and I'm looking for a place to turn my actions over to that represent the care of God, where am I going to turn my actions over to? Alcoholics Anonymous. It would only make sense. I'm going to turn my actions over to the care of Alcoholics Anonymous, and what does that mean? Sponsorship, meetings, commitments, trying to sponsor, working the steps. Right? All of the above. And so, when you ask me when I go to bed at night, are you really living in the essence of step 3? I can look back at my day and say, did I answer that telephone? Did I attend the meeting that I'm supposed to attend that day? Did I show up where I said I was going to in Alcoholics Anonymous? I can say, absolutely. I have turned my will and life over to the care of Alcoholics Anonymous, the care of God as understanding. Right? And so and there's great value if you're going to be working with people to have confidence in what you're doing. Because one of the biggest hindrances to people that want to work with people, but they think, I'm just not qualified. I just don't think I can. And they're extremely qualified. If you've got a car and you know nothing, you're extremely qualified to help out people in Alcoholics Anonymous. You see, trying to think that you're responsible to carry the message yourself is extremely self-centered. Carry them to the message. Carry that new person to where the message is being carried. Expose them to the message. So valuable. Extremely valuable. Right? And just sort of nod your head as they're talking. It's pretty easy. It's really pretty easy. It really is. I'm gonna end it with when I was a child I was taught this and I didn't even know it. That the pathway to happiness is to realize that God gives all of us, every single person is given gifts from God. My job is to find out what those gifts are, cultivate them, and use them to help other people. Period. That alone will give me the pathway to an extremely happy, fulfilled life. May not be wealthy, maybe will, but it will be a fulfilling life. If I just base my life on, find out what my gifts are, cultivate them, use them to help other people. And just look at Alcoholics Anonymous. It's like our gift. Most people have to go and search. What really is my gift? Try this, try that, try this, fail, try this, little success, but it's not really a gift. And they have to really, they go for it till they're 45, 50 years old, and maybe they're going to find what they're really gifted at. Right? And look at how it's handed to us on a silver platter. You're a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous who's found this solution. If you've done the work, you're properly armed with facts about yourself. You can affect other people the way no one else can. Use that gift. Cultivate it. Use it to help other people. God bless.